You've heard of the cities of Sodom and Gomorrah, but do you know the dark secrets that led to their total destruction? What kind of behavior is so serious as to provoke divine wrath? Today we will delve into a story that goes far beyond the legends and myths that surround it, unveiling the 5 sins that transformed Sodom and Gomorrah into eternal symbols of corruption. At every moment, you will discover that these errors are not so far from our reality, and that the lessons left behind these cities are more current than you imagine. Just imagine, two prosperous cities, with a strong economy, impressive architecture and a luxurious life for those who could afford it. Sodom and Gomorrah were the center of urban life of their time, with large markets and wealth everywhere. However, they hid a dark side that few know about. As greed, pride and contempt for others grew, an inevitable fate approached. And then, in a single day, everything was reduced to ashes, a reminder that excess has its consequences. But what really happened for God to intervene in such a drastic way? As this is still a danger to any modern society. Stay with us in this video to understand not only what happened, but also to reflect on whether the path we are taking is so different. After all, these ancient stories still have a lot to teach about how far human behavior can go and the dangers that come with it. And before we dive into this journey of discovery, take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. This way you don't miss any content like this, which goes beyond the surface and brings out the deep meaning of these stories. Furthermore, with your subscription, you help keep the channel growing and reaching more people who, like you, seek relevant knowledge and reflections. Returning to the topic, you may be surprised to know that Sodom and Gomorrah were not destroyed just by a specific error, but by a sequence of behaviors that became unbearable. The attitudes and choices made by its inhabitants exceeded all limits of morality, corrupting the essence of a society to the point of no return. Instead of seeking a path of empathy and respect, these cities have become extreme examples of selfishness and lack of compassion. It was as if humanity itself had been lost within its borders. Throughout this video, we will explore each of these 5 sins in detail, from pride and greed to disregard for hospitality and boundless immorality. But there is something even more important here. Every sin that led to the downfall of Sodom and Gomorrah can also be found in societies throughout history, including ours. So, the question is not just understanding the past, but reflecting on what we can learn and how to avoid making the same mistakes. This story goes far beyond what you imagine, and the answer to why God destroyed these cities can be a valuable wake-up call. Ready to dive into this story with us? Stay tuned, because what you discover in the next few minutes could transform the way you view these ancient lessons. The cities of Sodom and Gomorrah are frequently mentioned in the Bible as symbols of corruption and moral decadence. But have you ever wondered what really made God decide to destroy them? What limit did the population of these cities exceed for the sentence to be so severe? To understand, let's delve deeper into each sin attributed to Sodom and Gomorrah, in a narrative that reveals not only the mistakes committed, but also the dark warning they represent for the future. The fate of these ancient cities may contain valuable lessons, and you will discover, in this video, what really happened for God to pour out vicious fury. These cities were, at first glance, prosperous. Located in the region of Canaan, on the banks of the Dead Sea, Sodom and Gomorrah had a reputation for wealth and luxury, being commercial centers where merchants from all over visited. The culture and economy were advanced for the time, with buildings and markets that demonstrated the opulence of its residents. However, in the shadows, the same inhabitants cultivated a chaotic lifestyle and an unscrupulous society. They were willing to do anything to maintain their opulence and comfort, no matter who they shared or what principles they disrespected. This mask of prosperity hit a society that had completely lost its sense of morality. The first sin to be identified among the inhabitants of these cities was pride. In Sodom and Gomorrah, arrogance and selfishness were halted characteristics. The inhabitants believed that they were invincible and untouchable, above even the gods themselves. This excessive pride made them indifferent to the suffering of others, as each person focused on their own ambitions and desires, without considering the impact of their actions. Pride brought moral blindness to a society, where the values of empathy and compassion were seen as weaknesses, something that only the weak practiced. Pride is a human trait, but there, in Sodom and Gomorrah, it was taken to extremes, turning each person into their own god. Along with pride, greed spread like a plague in Sodom and Gomorrah. This was the secret sin, and it manifested itself in all layers of a society. The rich mercilessly exploited the poor, accumulating even more wealth, while the humblest people suffered from hunger and need. Greed was cowarding coexistence and establishing a system of exploitation where the misery of others was just a source of profit. Money and power were the only objective, and each inhabitant saw others only as a tool to achieve this end. There were reports of extreme injustices, where any act of generosity was a source of ridicule. Thus, greed transformed the city into a place of inequality, where compassion was seen as a weakness and coldness dominated relationships. The third sin, violence, became part of everyday life in Sodom and Gomorrah. This violence was not only physical, but also psychological, being a common way of resolving any conflict or imposing will. Fights, robberies and even murders were seen as banal, almost natural. The brutality no longer shocked anyone, and human life had lost its value. Coexistence was based on fear and intimidation, and the strongest abused the weakest without any remorse. This was a society where power was in the hands of whoever was capable of doing the most harm to others, and this uncontrollable aggressiveness was one of the main reasons why destruction became inevitable. In addition to all this violence, the fourth sin that prevailed was lack of hospitality. In a historical period where hospitality was a secret value, the treatment of foreigners in Sodom and Gomorrah was shocking. Instead of being welcomed, travelers were persecuted, robbed and often raped. The inhabitants saw any foreigner as a traitor, even worse, as an opportunity to satisfy their own cruel desires and ambitions. This disrespect was not only a breach of social values, but a symbol of the moral bankruptcy and lack of humanity that was established. Cities began to be seen as dangerous places, where no one who arrived from outside left without a deep trauma. But perhaps the most shocking sin was the sexual debauchery and corruption that took hold in Sodom and Gomorrah. This fifth sin consisted of an insatiable search for momentary and irresponsible pleasures, without any consideration for the consequences. There was no respect or limits, and this immorality distorted human relationships, transforming them into mere acts of personal satisfaction. Many sources claim that this moral degradation was the last straw for God, who decided that these cities could no longer be saved. Disrespect for the laws of morality became so intense that the very idea of limits seemed unthinkable, and humanity was reduced to mere puppets of its darkest desires. Faced with this entire scenario, God decided that something needed to be done. The violence, greed, pride, lack of hospitality and debauchery were so great that divine justice itself demanded a response. But before destroying the cities, God sent HAS messengers to probe and give one last chance for redemption. These messengers, on their visit, confirmed that the situation was indeed untenable, but they found a man willing to make one last appeal for the city. That man was Abraham, known for his unwavering faith and kindness. Abraham found himself faced with a difficult mission. He decided to intercede for Sodom and Gomorrah, proposing an agreement to God. And if there were righteous people in the city, would it still be destroyed? Abraham then began to negotiate, asking God to spare the city if at least 10 righteous people were found. With each attempt, Abraham's hope diminished, as the messengers reported the evil that had taken over the place. In the end, it became clear that there was no more goodness left there. Abraham understood that even he was powerless in the face of the moral decadence that had set in, and accepted that the fate of the cities was already sealed. On the morning that the destruction occurred, the sky opened over Sodom and Gomorrah, and fire and brimstone began to fall. In a matter of minutes, the entire structure that the residents had built was destroyed, reduced to ashes. The screams of terror echoed through the ruins as people ran, but it was too late. The fire consumed everything it found, and the dark cloud that formed symbolized the end of an era. God kept each year's promise, and the cities were completely obliterated, leaving only a reminder that corruption has its price. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah dies not end with their destruction, but with the warning they represent. This event reminds us that morality is a delicate balance, and that boundless power and desire can lead any society to collapse. The fall of these cities continues to warn us about the path humanity must avoid, reminding us that every act, no matter how small, contributes to everyone's destiny. It is a reminder that corruption, whether of values or actions, does not go unnoticed and that there will always be consequences. The ruins of Sodom and Gomorrah serve as a warning symbol throughout the ages. After all, if even the richest and most powerful cities were destroyed, what guarantees that the same could not happen anywhere that follows the same path? The fate of these cities remains in history as a lesson that the world must not forget. Because in the end, the true moral of the story is that limits exist for a reason, and that exceeding them is a sure path to disaster. Even after thousands of years, the story of Sodom and Gomorrah is still one of the most cited as an extreme example of the consequences of corruption and moral decay. But the question remains, are the values and behaviors of this city so far from our current reality? In many modern societies we find a cause of the attitudes and vices that dominated these ancient cities. The excessive search for power, greed that leads to the exploitation of vulnerable communities, individualism and a lack of empathy seem to have become commonplace. The narrative of Sodom and Gomorrah alerts us to the importance of maintaining a structure of values that protects the collective. She reminds us that when selfishness and the desire for power become more important than the well-being of all, a society finds itself on dangerous ground. More than a story about God's wrath, this is a tale about the dangers of a community that forgets its humanity and the importance of protecting the weakest. When people lose their ability to see others with empathy, the entire society begins to crumble from within, and the fate of Sodom and Gomorrah becomes a real possibility. Another point that history highlights is the strength of individual and collective choices. Each inhabitant of Sodom and Gomorrah, by ignoring the values that could have saved their cities, contributed to their downfall. In contrast, we see the figure of Abraham, who represents compassion and the willingness to intercede for the good of all, even when the chances of success were minimal. Abraham's courage and faith serve as a reminder that, even in the midst of chaos, there is always the possibility of fighting for a better path, but that, to do so, you need to have the courage to act. The end of Sodom and Gomorrah is a clear reminder that the pursuit of limitless pleasure, disrespect and arrogance never go unpunished. The ruins of these cities continue to inspire questions about what could have been different and how their inhabitants could have avoided destruction. After all, as long as there are people who remember the teachings of the story, Sodom and Gomorrah will continue to be symbols of warning, symbols that remind us to preserve our humanity and to fight for justice, empathy and peace. The next time you hear about Sodom and Gomorrah, remember that it is not just an ancient story, but a metaphor for the present. The same challenges and dilemmas that existed back then are still with us, and it is up to each person to choose what kind of future they want to build. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is more than a narrative of destruction. It is a warning that spans centuries about the dangers of a society that loses its values. Although the destruction of cities is a stunning and visually powerful act, the real impact lies in the moral lessons it carries. These 5 sins, pride, greed, violence, lack of hospitality and unrestrained debauchery. Reflect a moral decadence that led the city to ruin. This is a reminder that a society where selfishness and hedonism prevail is condemned to lose what is most precious, its own humanity. When we look at the present day, it is almost inevitable to recognize a cause of these same behaviors. The search for power at any cost, the exploitation of the most vulnerable, the lack of empathy with outsiders, and the idolatry of instant pleasures continue to appear all around us, from the most visible places to the most hidden corners of a society. Sodom and Gomorrah ceased to physically exist, but the message of their destruction resonates as a warning to all generations that came after. What happened there can serve to get us on a different path, avoiding the same fall. The story also reminds us of the importance of individuals like Abraham, who dared to intercede for the cities, even though he knew the gravity of their sins. He represents the possibility of a different future, where justice and compassion can still be stronger than corruption and selfishness. Even in the face of the corruption of Sodom and Gomorrah, Abraham still believed that a few righteous souls could save the city. He reminds us that there is always hope as long as there are people willing to fight for what is right, protect others and preserve what is most important, our collective morality. Thus, Sodom and Gomorrah are not just two ancient cities destroyed by God. They are eternal symbols of the consequences of our choices. This story reminds us that each individual action and each collective value contributes to the destiny of an entire society. If pride, greed and violence prevail, destruction is a real possibility. But on the other hand, empathy, compassion and justice can prevent any society from falling into the same ruin. Given all this, the question that remains is, are we following a path that brings us closer to Sodom and Gomorrah, or are we building a future where these sins are overcome by kindness and mutual respect? The choice is ours, and it must be made every day. May the history of these cities continue to remind us that, just as in the past, our actions have consequences, and that it is our duty to create a world where fundamental values such as justice and compassion are preserved.